Hello and welcome back to MacArthur Manor. I'm here with my co-host Andrea, and I don't know why I did that intro since I never did that before, but I did it, and here we are. How's it going?
It's good. The weather in LA is amazing. So.
Yeah, it's actually not as rainy as it's been.
Has it been rainy at all?
You mean, yeah, remember earlier this year?
No, dude. Come on. We're talking being the president of now. The last week it hasn't rained at all.
Oh, yeah. So that's what I meant. Like, it hasn't been as rainy.
It's been really nice. So we're very fortunate here. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I just I kind of came down from a big test this weekend. We'll see how I did in a few weeks. But
how are you feeling about it?
Feeling a lot of different kind of complicated, twists and turns of emotions. But I guess it's just kind of, if I had to sum it up, existential about it. I feel existential.
Is that really a feeling?
Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, what did I get? Did I get a good score? What does it even matter if I got a good score? Do I really want to do this? Blah, 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 blah. It's like a lot of, yeah, so I smoked a lot of weed, because why not?
You didn't want to cope with the feelings?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Escapism.
Yeah, I'm my own personal psychiatrist, so I prescribed myself.
Oh, got it. What
cannabis.
Did your actual therapist say?
What did he say to me this week? What did he say to me? I guess it's just kind of like keep track of the small victories, the process. It's all about the process. It's, it's not about these finite games of meeting certain goals and blah, 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 and yada, yada, yada.
Do you find that valid or?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in the grand scheme of things, in order to combat the second law of thermodynamics, that everything is entropying everywhere, you kind of have to self-generate a sense of purpose or meaning out of life some way and deal with it. You are looking at me as if I am a crazy person.
If that's how you're accepting or receiving it, then okay.
Anyhow, what you got for me? You got
what do you got for me?
What's
that
I got for
shirt
you?
You're wearing?
Oh, yeah. So this is gonna be probably the last Breaking Bad shirt I'm gonna probably buy in a while.
Who says that?
I've been running out there's not that many Breaking Bad t-shirts, surprisingly enough.
Unless you want to send links below, definitely pop them down.
Sure. If
they're interesting, of course.
If you got good links to some good shirts. But this is the titular character. Remember I told you what titular meant? It means like the character
head?
that's like the title
Got it.
of the whatever.
One could deduce that.
But yeah, as you could see, it's him during multiple stages of his kind of development.
That's nice. That's cool.
Yeah, chemistry teacher.
Do you hang dry that so that it doesn't get all fucked up?
Oh, is that how you're supposed to do it?
Yeah.
I mean, this is the first time I washed it. I mean, wore it, so I haven't washed it yet.
Yeah, I would say definitely let it hang dry because otherwise the heat from the dryer will just rip it apart. Or sometimes it gets stuck to each other and that sucks.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. I'll keep that in mind.
Thank you for that shirt. It's fun. I like it. I think it's my favorite shirt of yours so far.
Yeah, I like the I don't know what. Yeah, I don't know why.
Low-key, he looks like Iron Man.
Yes. I mean, I guess they're both scientists that are
It's just the red and gold.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this version is richer too. So.
Correct. Very rich. Like bury your money rich.
In the middle of the desert.
Correct. Okay, so my question, are you ready for it?
Sure.
Are we in a recession?
Are we in a recession?
That's the question I started this whole show with, and I will continue because...
Wait, yeah. So, wait. Before I answer, what made you think of that all of a sudden?
It's not all of a sudden. It's the question that's maybe on everyone's minds. Like, is this the recession? Is this what the recession is? Or are we waiting for some bigger crash?
I mean, like I said in that previous episode, where I talked about how they changed the definition of recession. I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter what the definition of a recession is at this point, right? It just depends on like, what are you feeling? Like, how are you feeling, and how do you feel like the people around you are feeling about the economic environment? What have they been saying?
You know, there are various parties, and they're acting in contradictory ways where, yeah, there could be a recession, but they might not be acting in a way that is one would during a recession.
Yeah.
And then others are being very conservative.
Yeah.
In terms of what they're doing, how they're spending, what they're choosing. I mean, of course, business, you gotta spend money to make money, but it's really just so polar, the environment right now. So I can't tell.
I think what you're seeing is that different ways of people coping with certain things. I think invariably when there are kind of very panic situations economically, sometimes people can go in the opposite direction, where it seems like they have this mentality of like, well, it's all going to shit anyway, so what does it matter if I'm 10 grand in the hole or 50 grand in the hole, right? They're just, that's the kind of mentality some people have. I have this one friend who, because of the pandemic and because he wasn't getting that much work during the pandemic, he kind of spent himself into like a little bit of a credit card hole. So I think that the reactions that what you're seeing is not, I think they can both be indicative of people worrying about, shit hitting the fan.
So are we in a recession?
My personal opinion is that yes, we are, and we have been for probably, I want to say like since maybe mid to late last year.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we're still shedding jobs.
Yeah.
I think the big tech companies are making another round of layoffs. I know Disney is making like another round of layoffs here and there. 7,000 people, I think, the last time I heard. So yeah, I think given that people are, hiring freeze and they're stopping a lot of their investments, especially in the media, the entertainment stuff that I'm talking about. I think all the signs point to we're kind of recessing at the moment.
Thank you. All right, your turn.
I don't know what do you think? Do you feel like we are, or based on how 2008 was, because that was the last time we had a recession, right?
Homie, I was not I was not aware at that time.
How old are you?
I'm 34. I was in college. I lived in a bubble.
So you were 19.
Yeah, I was in a bubble, homie. So I'm not to say I'm not exposed to it, but I wasn't really aware.
You graduated 2011?
11.
Well, how was like the economic environment then? Because that's kind of like...
Oh, in my opinion, it sucked.
Yeah, so that's kind of like, what you can expect from a recession.
I don't know. Right now, I think it's just like with everything that's going on with technology and artificial intelligence, it just seems like besides for money, the entire landscape in which we work or that companies are working is evolving and changing, and we're having to learn to evolve and be agile so that we can compensate for what's coming, what's the new normal. And so with that, we're having to companies are having to adjust, and they're shedding the weight. It's like when you're working out, right? You've been bulking, and at this point, when your body becomes efficient, it sheds all the unnecessary. So
is that how I don't know? Is that how it works? It just
of course you have to adjust diet, but from my understanding of what happens is
once you accumulate more muscle, your muscle is like, using a lot of those calories up, like
Correct.
Just by existing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
I've
then
heard
you
that
just
before.
shed, right? And then you just become your most efficient self, and you can start like Cain eating cake whenever the fuck you want, just because you've got all that muscle mass that just devours all those calories and all that fat and all that carbon is just expelling constantly. Fat loss, right? And so for me, I'm like, is a recession happening? I'm not sure, but I know something's going on that is going to get us to that next level where the rich are just going to get richer.
Yeah. I mean, I told you about the Stephen Hawking quote, right? About like how, everyone expects this Star Trek reality. But yeah, as we see, like you said, the tech people are getting ridiculously wealthy, right? I think in 2021, obviously this market has gone down since, but there were people talking about Elon Musk being like a trillionaire eventually. It's just like, what is it going like? This is crazy, and it's just I don't know. I don't see any changes in that regard. So, I mean, if you're asking me if there's a recession, I think we're like possibly en route to a depression, like something our generation has never seen, or people who are alive today have never seen this before, in my opinion.
It's literally 100 years later, almost.
Yeah, because like the Great Depression was, 29 to pretty much the start of the World War One or World War Two, which is like 39 or 39, 41, whatever. And so, yeah, if you were born 1929, we would be what, 97 by now, 6 or something like that, or something like it's 90 something. So you're probably not alive.
I mean, you could be.
You could be. So maybe I was a little exaggerating, but basically, we might see shit that people our age, of course, have never seen before, in my opinion. And that is kind of scary to me. I'm just kind of like trying to think about how, what my escape plan is.
Yo. Okay, so with that being said, though, now that you've got me thinking, it's interesting because, as you know, movies have predicted what the pandemic was.
Sure.
Right? And
like Fallout, or what? Which movie?
The movie from the 90s with the monkey, Contagion.
Oh, yeah. I never watched that, but I heard people were watching it all during the pandemic.
Oh yeah, that was a big hit. But like that movie, I wonder, should a depression hit, would The Purge be the next movie that
becomes reality?
Becomes reality, yeah.
I
did not invest enough in guns.
I don't think The Purge will happen per se. I think that America is way too chaotic for that kind of organization to happen.
Really?
Yeah, I think what's going to happen is, I mean, like we've been seeing a lot of already like civil unrest in the form of like mass shootings and all this other stuff. I think that it's just a condition of like psychological, like collective, like American psychosis is going out of control, in my opinion, because of A, pandemic, because of B, the economy. It's just like as people become more and more desperate, crazier stuff starts to happen, right?
So you don't think a purge would happen then? If the American psychosis, like you said, is just crumbling, at what point do you think the purge wouldn't happen?
I don't think the purge as it is, like something like the purge might happen, but I don't think it's going to be like the purge where everyone agrees we're not going to kill each other until this day. I think it's just going to be like every day is the purge.
Oh man, it's just
which is why I'm like, I need to figure out, I'm going to be trying to, now that I'm done with the test, I'm going to try to plan trips to Asia, try to see if like I can live
find your new home.
Yeah, find my new home, exactly. It's been like a year or so since I've been thinking about this, but like every day more and more I'm like starting to like make it more a reality for because like I grew up in America, and when I was growing up, like I didn't even think I was going to move to LA, like let alone, like.
Well, who thinks they're going to ever move out of their town until they're actually an adult?
I guess like I thought as a kid, there's enough economic activity in New York.
You actually thought of that as a kid?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of economic activity happening. I can stay here and exist.
Yeah, like no, because like I was thinking, oh, what life am I gonna have when I'm an adult? I'll probably like have a life similar to my parents. Like I'll probably be a doctor or, have a family, go to this Korean church that I grew up in.
That's what now. No family, no church, not a doctor. Just kidding, you do have a family. Your mom and dad and sister.
Yes, look at me now. Look at me now. I'm not married, no, not a doctor,
Doesn't
not
go
in
to
New
church.
York. Doesn't go to church.
Do you think
Yeah.
going to church would help you?
Help me in what way? Psychologically, mentally, spiritually?
All the above?
I think it could introduce some sort of structure in my life. It's just I'm so repelled by Korean church now.
But why? The Korean community there is so tight knit. Low key jealous of how tight knit that is.
Yeah, but there's all this kind of like interpolitical kind of like strife and this. It's just
That's
like
what you
this,
get when you get people together.
It's just all this fakeness, I can't
There's
deal
also
with
realness
fake.
in it, though. It's not just all fake. How would it?
Yes and no. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I might visit soon with this friend of mine. Actually, he's been going to church regularly recently. And
I know we've discussed this, but just like in beef, when homeboy goes back to church, he just starts crying.
Oh, do you know that he actually knows those people, the praise people?
Cool.
So one of the actors, I don't know if he acted in the scene you were in, but he's like kind of the praise leader, the original praise leader.
The scene I was in. What do you?
The scene he
return?
Yeah. He's actually the brother of a pastor of a church that I went to.
Cool.
And Stephen went to that church too. So
Okay.
like a lot of those people are actually from that church.
Oh, that's nice. That's cool.
Yeah.
So more compelled to go to church now.
That
guy.
I don't know. I mean, those guys are fine. I'm fine with Jason. I'm fine with the guys in the praise team, Tim Joe as well. But I don't know. Korean churches just I think I'm done with. If I were to go back to a church, it'd be more of like a multicultural church.
So my friend loves. I'll send you a link, but she loves this church in San Francisco that's very inclusive and just.
What's it called?
I'll send it to you.
Okay. I mean, that's one I'm gonna go to. It's called Oasis. It's in K-Town. It has a Korean pastor, but it's more like diversity focused.
But I'll send you the link for that place. Because even if you're ever you're sitting in the car and you're just like, I just want to listen to something good besides for Oprah's Soulful Sunday. They also you could like stream it, and it feels good because it's not like God is. Like, you need to fear everything God says. It's not like, dude, we're all love. Like, let's just coexist and be cool with each other.
Yeah. Man, you gave me an idea, actually. I might, You ever read Vladimir Lenin?
No.
I feel like whenever I read Lenin,
oh my God,
it almost gives me that feeling you're talking about. Like, there's hope. There's like, this guy sees.
I'm glad you find someone that you can resonate with.
So now I'm going to make videos of me reading from Vladimir Lenin.
I'm sure there would be an audience for that. Okay, you ready to move on
to
the next topic?
I did some fact checks.
Oh, you don't want to do any more current events? Are you done with that? Bitcoin's up.
Bitcoin is up.
And so is Amazon.
I'm not sure about, but Bitcoin I could speak to a little bit about since I'm in kind of the crypto space. It had an all-time low, I think, not an all-time, but it had like its low, I guess, end of last year because of all the FTX. I don't know if you know that. There was a scandal with one of the exchanges, guys in jail or whatever. Anyway, that was low, and then now it went basically from 18 or 17 back up to like 30.
Wow.
And I think it's interesting because it's during kind of like almost like a global like market downturn, where Bitcoin is now going the opposite direction, right? And I think it's because usually they're pretty correlated with the market, but I think now people are starting to get afraid of America's monetary policy with the inflation. Yeah. And, with the recent stuff with the yuan, people people see that as like a break in the hegemony of the dollar. So
Oh man, I have not heard that term in forever.
wait, which term?
Hegemony.
Wait, you know what it means, right?
Of course I do.
Yeah.
But
Wait,
I'm just like, oh my gosh. I feel like I'm in high school again.
yeah. Well, anyway, so yeah, I think that's why people are buying into the long-term theory or thesis of Bitcoin, that it is this unchangeable store of value. You can't hack it. You can't change the amount of supply at all. No one can change the supply. So like, it's always going to be X amount of scarcity, X amount of whatever. And so people are like, oh, maybe I'll buy some more of this. At least that's what I'm thinking is going on.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. But yeah, here's some of the stuff from last time. I looked up
Fact
that.
checks.
Remember that Mexican tradition I talked to you about of like them crawling on the.
Oh yeah.
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 So actually, that is somewhat of a Mexican kind of thing, but it's almost like a cult. It's called the Santa Muerte cult, Saint Death. Apparently, like it's a lady saint who's supposed to, represent death, and some Mexican people, I guess, worship this person, and they go to her for guidance of, requests about death that are neither good or I don't know. It's this thing, I guess.
Okay, thanks for sharing.
The
What's
Catholic
next?
Church frowns upon it.
Okay. Moving on.
So Clarence Thomas was not the first SCOTUS.
Okay.
It was Thurgood Marshall.
Oh, I think I knew that already.
Okay. That was 1967. He was appointed by LBJ. It was actually Clarence Thomas replaced him when he retired in 1991 by George W. Bush. Marshall did not like, not George W. George regular Bush.
Okay.
George R. Bush.
Yeah. Elder.
Marshall
Senior.
hated Bush, but that's the way it went, I suppose. And Clarence Thomas, I'm not sure if you know, but he is a very conservative judge. He's actually probably considered the most conservative judge on the stuff right now. The staff of the SCOTUS, which apparently right now only has 8, not 9. I think they're looking for another vacancy to fill.
Go on, Biden, do your thing.
Yeah. Oh, and the thing we talked about yesterday, the billionaire or the millionaire, the Cash App guy.
That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Yes, what happened with him?
So his name is actually Bob Lee. I thought we were Ben Lee. We got it wrong last time, but whatever. I got it wrong last time. Whatever. But seems like he was killed by someone who knew him.
Dude.
Yeah.
Knew it.
Yeah. So.
Fuck, man. Who was it?
They're not exactly sure, but I think they say it was probably someone personal to him or something like that.
Duh.
Like in his network.
Okay, well, you'll continue on this.
Yeah.
Follow up when you find out more.
But now it's like, the progressives are saying, oh, look at these conservatives. They use this incorrectly to show that San Francisco is dangerous. And then the conservative people are like, well, San Francisco is dangerous.
It's still dangerous.
It doesn't disprove that it's so there's all that shenanigans going on. I'm not really gonna go into that. Whatever.
Thank you.
But
I want to know the tea about who killed him when you find out.
All right, I guess that'll be next time's fact check.
If we happen to find out that information.
The last thing was samurai versus ninja. He said, are they the same? They're not. Okay. Samurai were more of the warriors, like the knights, kind of like the analog. Yeah. They wore colorful robes, and like they were out in the open. They had certain kind of like a code of conduct.
Okay.
Bushido, which was like it's almost like chivalry. Like how like in combat in the olden days.
You really don't need to go further.
Anyway,
for that.
Ninjas were more mercenaries, assassins. They came more from the lower class because they're trying to get money.
They're like the Robin Hoods.
They're the ones who they were kind of tight clothing, black, and
stealthy.
They had no code of conduct. Anything goes to accomplish their mission.
Robin Hoods.
Sure. Sometimes the samurai fought the ninja, but not really. Sometimes they usually worked
in time.
Yeah, they usually work together on certain things, but. Yeah, they didn't really fight in combat too often.
So were they so imagine if the samurais were like the government's soldiers and the ninjas were an army they could buy or rent? Or rent.
They could. I don't know if they could. It was like a. I think they might have cooperated with ninja clans.
Okay.
But I'm not sure how that arrangement went, whether it was financial or political or.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That's that's cool. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So there you go.
Very good, sir. You ready to move on?
I am.
You ready to talk about Vietnamese history?
Vietnamese history.
Specifically, what I want to know
Yeah.
is, what do I want to know? I want to know more about the dynamics on what the French imperialism did to the country and how it affected the culture. Because as you know, there are so many people who are obsessed with French culture, Francophiles like to call themselves, and what did the French impart upon the Vietnamese, and how does it look today besides delicious sandwiches and beignets?
So I guess I wanted to start this by asking you what you know about the Vietnamese history at this time, or anything.
Nope, I'm just here for you, buddy.
So growing up, like, your parents wouldn't teach you at all about Vietnam history?
Dude, literally, I asked my mom, I was like, Mom, how was growing up during the war? She's like, yeah, it's just life. I'm like, homie, no, that's not life. Like,
wait, when did she leave?
Literally a year after the war ended.
So 76.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so she was there the entire time.
And my dad, dude, they literally didn't leave.
How old is she?
She's 60. Wait.
66. 66. So then,
she could be 66, or she could be 61.
I see.
No, she could be 61.
61.
Maybe.
Oh wow. So then 61. So then she was born in 62-ish, I guess, or 61. Oh, so she would have been like a kid.
Yeah.
Like a teenager once.
I was like, did you wear a white ao to school? She's like, yeah, it was normal. I was like, come on, what is up with this normal? I don't wear a white ao to school. That's not my normal.
Wait, you had to wear like a whole like.
Oh, girls in Vietnam have to wear a white ao to school.
Was it like a French school or was it
No, I think it's a Vietnamese school.
I see. Okay.
That's my shit. Oh, also, my dad.
Yeah.
Doesn't say shit. So it's like.
When did he come to the States?
Similarly to my mom, maybe a year after her.
And he's like same age-ish?
No, he's like 10 years older.
Oh, so he might have seen like some stuff.
Yeah, and the thing is, he came from, I think he lived in the north, and his family was maybe a little more affluent than my mom.
Uh-huh.
But, because like, he used to race cars and do all this shit in Vietnam. And I don't want to say he's a spoiled little boy, but he was the youngest son, doted upon, loved, and just them coming here, everything was taken away from them. Literally, I heard my grandma had to sew her jewelry and her clothes because they took everything.
Yeah, they're not letting the bourgeois keep any of that money.
No, homie, you don't know how it's like now. There's bourgeois who get to keep their money.
No, I know. It's just like, I mean, back then, things were a lot crazier back then.
Oh man, she was a factory owner, but
that's kind of like, I guess, like the craziness that I'm thinking we can maybe expect in our lifetimes if things keep going in a certain direction. But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, yeah. So I guess I could start with how the French got there in the first place. Right? I don't know if you know too much.
We talked about exploration.
Yeah. So obviously, we talked about Western imperialism.
Correct.
And how it started in the 1400s and stuff like that. And basically, by the 1500s, Portuguese traders started to go explore around that area. I think near what's kind of like that Tonkin area, Gulf of Tonkin area. Do you know what that is? It's like northern Vietnam.
Okay. I'm like, I've heard of it.
Yeah. Anyway, they started exploring it.
It's so funny because the Portugal is so small, but so mighty.
Well, that was early on, right? Because, you had Columbus in the early days. He was Italian, but I think, and then he was originally trying to get Spain because Spain and Portugal were the big boys back then.
Correct.
And, they explored. And then so they explored, But they really were more intent on China and Japan at the time, so they weren't interested in like really colonizing it that much.
Because it's human as fuck. I get it.
Yeah. Also, the locals were not really wanting to be colonized either, so it was more trouble than it was worth.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Did you know Japanese weather is similar to San Francisco?
Japanese, like which part?
Japan?
The south part of it. Because I know they have snow in some parts of Japan, don't they?
Oh, they do, but that's more north, of course.
Okay, you're talking about Tokyo.
Yeah, I think so.
I've never been to Tokyo, so I couldn't comment, but I could see that.
I was like, definitely would rather go to Japan than Vietnam. As I know the weather, I'd be like, I'm just going a little more north.
Have you gone to when you were in Vietnam? Which part were you in? South or
South?
Yeah.
Actually, I drove up and down, so I felt all the weathers.
And then when you go to Singapore, you're like, oh god.
I've never been to Singapore. A place I want to definitely go.
Oh god, don't walk around in sweatpants. Let me tell you that.
Why would I?
I don't know. I did that once for an hour and a half. It was not good.
Why only an hour and a half did you go run back to your hotel? I'm like, I need to change the shore.
No, I was walking and I didn't know that it was going to be that long, and I had already checked out of my room in the hotel. And I was just whatever. I was halfway on the way, and I was like, I might as well just walk the rest. It's fine, whatever. Anyway, in the 1600s, later on, the Dutch also came, but they were repelled as well. The English started trading in the late 1600s. But then during this time, this was when the French started trading with them as well. And soon after they started trading with them in the 1600s, they had Catholic missionaries kind of come in and do their Catholicism and stuff like that. And the Vietnamese authorities were kind of suspicious about what were going on. So as time went on, they sort of detained some of these missionaries because they were like, what are these guys doing? Blah, blah, blah. And then the French, they used that as pretext to be like, oh, we need to free our missionaries. We need to go in and so over the next few decades or so, they started having military campaigns in all around Vietnam, which they called Indochina at the time back then. And slowly but surely, they kind of took over territory by territory. And by 1884 or so, they kind of took over.
Wow.
Yeah. So it wasn't actually, I didn't know this, but it wasn't actually a too long a period of colonization. It's kind of similar to me, in my opinion, of when Korea was kind of annexed by Japan. Mm-hmm. That also was not too long of a period, but it was pretty brutal. And it started around the same time, like late 1800s was really when Japan started to encroach into Korea's territory, and it was when they defeated the Russians in 1905. That's when they were like, yep, this is ours now.
Let's go back to Vietnam, homie.
Yeah. So, well, it's somewhat related because Ho Chi Minh talked to Korean nationalists. Never mind. Anyway. So by 1885, they kind of had full control over Vietnam.
Wow.
And they split it up actually into 3 areas called Tonkin, Annam, and Cochin China. China. I don't know. They did a lot of these things to kind of separate Vietnamese people so they wouldn't, band again. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it was a pretty brutal kind of colonization.
Would you say it's as brutal as Japan and Korea? No, because you were not there.
Yeah, it's hard to say since I'm not. I think the Japanese were very unique in some of the things that they did. That's how I'll leave it at that.
But the thing is, because we know that, I don't know, would people know to write the histories about the atrocities that the French did to the Vietnamese culture, or maybe the French didn't know how to be as diabolical?
No, the French were pretty diabolical too.
Then there you are.
I think they forced a lot of French culture onto Vietnam. It was the same kind of thing, like the white man's burden of oh, these Vietnamese, we need to civilize them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We need to civilize them. As of today, they still use Romanized lettering, right? Because the Chinese style lettering, they kind of got rid of all of that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because even in Korea they have symbols and not symbols.
Chinese.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what Korean would call the hanja.
Yeah.
It's not widely used, but yeah, Koreans do learn Chinese how to write Chinese and their own that own thing that was created by our king in 1390 whatever, King Sejong. King Sejong or whatever.
Okay.
He created this the easier to phonetic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's because the reason Korea and Vietnam were kind of related in that way is because this was after China was taken down, right? In China in 1830s and the 1850s, those were the Opium Wars where they kind of got weakened. And that's when, like, after the Western powers started to carve that up, they're like, oh, here's Vietnam, here's Korea. Like, let's try to encroach on these things. And so I think the French at the time saw Vietnam as a great place to produce rubber, because at the time during the Industrial Revolution,
they didn't have much.
Yeah. So this is when like started to produce a lot of cars.
Yes.
So by 1907, they realized that it was a great place to produce rubber, and so this is where Michelin in France started in the 1920s and 1930s. They got a lot of that raw material rubber
From Vietnam.
Yeah, from Vietnam.
Okay. How come they didn't go to Laos? It's literally next door.
Wait, what happened?
Why didn't the French go to Laos?
They did eventually.
Okay. I was like, really? I never hear about the French in Laos.
They took over. I mean, they took over Laos and Cambodia after.
Oh,
later. Yeah.
Maybe I did know that then.
No, they.
About Thailand? No one's touched Thailand.
Yeah, no one's touched Thailand, as far as I know. I think it was just it was too cumbersome. It wasn't worth like going over the mountains and whatever.
All right.
But yeah, so then Vietnam before that used to be a subsistence economy. It used to be just kind of like people farming and
rice.
Yeah,
fish.
exactly. But afterwards, since they're producing products for export and products for profit, the only way to get food now was to work for one of these companies. Sometimes they would force labor into working in the rice fields, working in the rubber factories and stuff like that. And
did they even want children? Because slave labor and child labor is such a thing.
I mean, they just wanted labor, whatever
it.
they can get, right?
Okay.
They were people working 15-hour shifts, and it was pretty brutal. I feel like it's more kind of like similar to, it's kind of similar to slavery.
Yeah.
They actually had plantations, like rice plantations, rubber plantations, and stuff like that, where people would work. That's where they would.
1907.
That's 1907 was when rubber started too, but then they were also doing rice because there was a lot of rice exports.
So like maybe say 1915.
For what?
Oh, just thinking about the time frame in which like this is happening. So 1907.
1907 is when the rubber started being exported, but they started doing all this like by the 80s.
When did the U.S. stop slavery?
1865.
Got it. So let's start slavery elsewhere.
Yeah, it's that's kind of also the thing. It's like we don't necessarily call it slavery, but with the amount of taxes we're levying on them, with the amount of stuff that we're forcing upon them, you really don't have any other choice but to work for one of these factories in order to survive, right? Because they're not going to give you food for free.
No.
And they tax all that shit, so that's how they keep people in line.
Oh my goodness! Please continue.
So yeah. Obviously, there was a lot of malcontent. People were rebelling, whatever. They had up to 12,000 political prisoners, 88 of which they guillotined, many of which whom they just sent to camps for hard labor.
More slavery.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then when did this all end?
This ended, I guess, technically it ended in 1954 when...
Oh, and then America just decided to come in soon after.
Yeah, so what happened was in 1930, actually...
Yeah.
This was like, before the World War II, right? There was a nationalist movement that was trying to win kind of like liberation for Vietnam within the French military, right? So they had kind of like agents, whatever, within it. So there were 50 of them that kind of like tried to start this rebellion and thought like if, even if they died, that it would start this like movement, right? Like people would rise up, right? But then they were betrayed by a lot of like, Vietnamese people who were working with the French. And so they were like all killed and like all like executed. It was rumored that Ho Chi Minh at the time like told them to wait and like we need to organize whatever. But then I guess they didn't heed his wisdom, I guess. And the result of that though was that there was a national liberation movement, and now like the communists kind of took over it because that one failed so miserably.
Yeah.
And from that, in 1941, the French lost control, but it wasn't because they lost the Vietnamese. It was because Hitler kind of took over
And
France.
they need to come back and
yeah,
home.
and Japan was just like, all right, we're coming in, fuck you.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so then Ho Chi Minh kind of like pushed them back by 1945 and declared independence for Vietnam until France was like, yeah, we want this back.
No, you're ours. God, that sounds like a terrible relationship.
Right. And the other thing was, so after World War II, a lot of people were like, man, maybe this capitalism thing isn't so great after all, in Europe even. And so in France, there was actually a small movement of socialism developing.
Yeah.
And so one of the reasons the Americans kind of helped France try to reclaim it is to like stop that movement from like
burgeoning.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, you guys can get back your colony, blah blah blah. So the Americans like basically, what we're seeing with Ukraine, that's what the Americans did with France. They just pumped them full of money and like materials and resources to try to defeat.
Like, homie, you can pump those shit back at home. Like,
yeah,
infrastructure needs it.
And so that's why they tried to, after 54, they tried to install their puppet leader, I forget, something DM, in the South to say, oh, well, the South Vietnamese want democracy, so we have to fight for them. That's the pretext they gave.
Okay, so then they got kicked out.
Yeah.
Kind of. America came in. They too got kicked out.
Yeah.
And so, what is the result?
Result today?
Correct.
Of like the French colonialism and stuff like that,
And just
or
the impact of on the overall country. Like, how have the French imparted both good and bad? I mean, there's still factories there now pumping out Nike and North Face for consumers.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel like the French, the things I've been reading is like they were even more brutal than the English were to like some of their colonies in terms, they didn't even like try to develop stuff or invest in Vietnam. They just wanted the maximum amount of profits they could extract with the minimum amount of like work or like effort involved. And there was like a lot of corrupt governors who were given like complete autonomy. And so there was just a lot of corruption as well in that French establishment. And so, yeah, everything I'm reading is just kind of like, I can understand why. Yeah.
It's still rampant in Vietnam. Is that what you're saying is due to
Oh,
the French,
no.
or?
I guess I was saying I could understand why the revolutionary movement was so strong there.
Mm-hmm.
Because like it was a pretty brutal kind of like colonization process.
I get that, but I mean, at the end of the day, the Vietnamese culture, how would you say that it's been affected by the French?
So, I mean, yeah, I guess like they did,
especially as an outsider. I'm Vietnamese, so it feels like it's my normal.
Yeah, I mean, like we said before, now they have to use that Romanized language.
Yes.
That's still to this day. Some people in Vietnam still prefer the Saigon name to Ho Chi Minh City.
Oh, yeah.
Which is the name that was
given by the French?
I don't know if it was given by the French, but it was like emphasized by the French.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah, like basically it was the name that the French designated for it. Yeah, I have to research that a little bit more or fact check that again. But yeah, I refuse to call it Saigon.
That's crazy because I grew up knowing it as Saigon. So
I mean, so the people who kind of like escape to America, they're more anti
Ho Chi Minh
North,
City.
yeah, anti North Vietnam because
Uh-huh.
of like that's how Koreans and Vietnamese are kind of similar. How we're both kind of
Trained to hate the
trained to
North.
hate the North. Yeah,
Which is
exactly.
funny because, as we've talked, we've talked French, banh mi, pate in the banh mi, delicious. Uh, letters in the language.
Yeah,
I don't think clothing. I mean, I know that a lot of French people were intimate with Vietnamese people, so some of the features of Europeans have come
yeah.
to,
There was definitely a lot of genetic
yep, mixing and
mixing.
mingling. So therefore, of course, there's some features in Vietnamese people that are more European.
Yeah,
Um,
I guess I never thought about that. Like with Korean and Japan, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference really.
yeah, like my mom's all like, "Oh yeah, my aunt's got blue eyes." It's like, what?
Yeah.
And blonde hair, and I was like, "Okay, not Vietnamese."
And I'm sure they probably use that as a measure of control too.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, by putting, those kinds of kids in positions of power,
Oh yeah.
but being the kind of like in between. Um,
What else could I do? Affect food, culture, schooling. I don't know.
yeah, I mean, it did affect schooling, but they didn't really like teach like their thing was like to keep the Vietnamese down as much as possible, right? They don't want them
Yo.
to rise up against you. They don't want them to do anything against you. So you're not really going to educate them that much. You're going to like keep them
Brutalize them.
use kind of like your own systems, right?
Yeah.
Like your French systems of law and all this other stuff. But as far as like resource allocation,
Got it.
you're not really
You're not
trying,
investing.
you're not trying to help them.
Got it.
You're trying to keep them as placated as possible so they keep, producing your rubber.
So, well, happy we've talked about how the North and South separation due to the colonization.
Yeah.
It takes me directly to our question. You ready for it? How much success did you have converting other Koreans to being pro North Korea, especially about opinions toward the North? Whatever that means.
Yeah. So I think he means basically, so I'm Korean, obviously. Yeah, I am. Did you know that?
I did.
So basically what he's asking is there's a lot of propaganda that the Korean diaspora, South Korea has, we've just been bombarded.
Brainwashed.
My name, for example, is the name of the Korean War general, right? That's
Yes.
that's like huge propaganda.
Oh, correct. That is.
Right. And so it's very uncommon to see someone who's Korean who's sympathetic to the North because it's like everything you're told about them is that, Kim Jong Un or, Kim Il Sung, they're evil people that just wanted power for themselves and, they were selfish and they don't care about their people. This is like the stuff you're told your entire life. So he's asking kind of like, have you had success like breaking through all of that, And honestly, it's been tough. I'm not gonna lie. I was just on a show for Radio
yeah.
Korea. Did I show you that?
No.
Okay,
But you
I'll
talked about it.
yeah. I'll send you the link. I'll put in a link below.
Oh, thanks.
But yeah, I was talking to some Koreans about communism in the North and whatever, and they were asking me a lot of pointed questions. I think the big thing is just the lack of information that's out there, and that's I think a function on purpose. The Korean War. I don't know if you know this, but many people actually don't know this, but it's called the Forgotten War in U.S. history
Wow.
because there's, people just don't really know that much about it. And that's by design, in my opinion, because like I think the CIA and the Department of Defense wanted to keep this under wraps as much as possible to like deflect what was actually going on. And I'll talk about that more in a future episode. That's probably going to require a lot more research. But yeah, so it's just been a process of trying to unravel all of that stuff that we've been told and try to break it down. And so it's been tough. I guess I've been just connecting with like-minded individuals on Twitter first. And I think once we have a solid base and, more and more followers, then we can like kind of like go into it. But at this point, I feel like it is difficult to get people who are Korean to see the North in a positive light.
Have you discussed it with your parents?
Oh yeah, they
Think you're crazy?
they think I'm crazy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Just don't all our parents think we're crazy?
Yeah,
Maybe
but
not.
it's funny because they call me John the Baptist now.
Oh, really?
Do you know who John the Baptist is?
Yeah.
He's like this very like, oh, so you've gone to church and stuff like that? And-
I told you I've dabbled,
Uh-huh.
so but it's funny just to hear that. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're talking about that here in this space. It's funny. It's weird.
well, that's how
I
Catholicism came
cannot
to
believe that
the
they
Vietnamese.
call you that. Your parents.
Yeah, because I'm always
funny.
telling them to repent for the sins of their fathers and their forefathers.
Well, yeah, okay. I would definitely call you that too.
But yeah, I don't know. I think they think I read too much. I think too much.
You do think too much.
But yeah, I feel like I unfortunately I'm the kind of person who's does not know when to quit.
I don't think that some people think that's a bad thing.
Maybe that's true,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
All right, well, this has been fun.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for sending that question in. I encourage everyone to continue sending questions in.
Send all the
Comments
questions.
about any other additional information that Doug forgot to share with me or anything that you think that we would both benefit from. This has been delightful. And also, if you have any topics that you want to hear more or have Doug research more about, love to hear that. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching.
All right. See you then.